How do you get those recalcitrants, those nervous nellies and past failures back into your funnel as quickly as possible?
Funnel Vision is brought to you by Math Marketing, creators of the Funnel Plan. Math Marketing is the source of the 1, 2, 3 of B2B.
Part of the answer is you don't want them in there quickly. You want them in there surely or confidently. You want them to want to be in your funnel. Getting in there quickly is different and perhaps a little self-serving. We want them to really want to be in the funnel. So how do we do that? In this week's show, we're going to explore again the difference between nurturing and recycling and the tactics that we find useful for moving buyers when they're outside of your funnel to get them back into your funnel. I covered a bit of this last week, but in case you missed last week's show, let me quickly restate the difference between nurturing and recycling. So, recycling is taking buyers who've leaked from your funnel and getting them back into your funnel. That's recycling. Nurturing can be used when buyers are in your funnel. Quick example. Let's say that you've got somebody who has self-subscribed to your blog, but you might have a 3 or 4 email sequence that you send to those people to warm them up to then receive the blog. Or maybe there's a nurture that you use for an asset. So you've got a white paper download or a video view or some other asset view that you require them to give you a few details to access. Or perhaps there's then 2 or 3 or 4 emails that follow the consumption of that asset. They're all nurtures, but they're not necessarily recycling. Recycling is specifically dealing with buyers who've left. So with that difference on the table then, what are some of the best tactics to use? I'll tell you some of the things that we do at Math Marketing. So we've got Funnel Vision, which by the way you're watching right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, you may not know that it's sent out via email once every month to our Funnel Vision subscribers, every week to our blog subscribers, and you can get it on YouTube once every week as well. And so we actually use this one tactic for all of those purposes, for first-time subscribers and for late leakers alike. Why? Well, frankly, because we're so busy serving people like you that we don't have a lot of time to do our own marketing. What would be better in our case? Remember, we're selling a relatively complex product and service, it's a relatively slow cycle, and it's a relatively big decision for our prospects. Given all of those circumstances, then what should we be doing? Well, we should have a separate nurture program for our self-subscribers, honouring the fact that they've just started, and give them some of our best blogs right up front to share with them, and then put them into a regular stream. Separately, for asset downloaders, there should be a unique nurture program for every asset, depending on what the asset is. If it's a white paper talking about sales and marketing alignment, our recent report, for example, then obviously the nurture would want to talk about alignment and the report itself. So here are some of the key findings that others have told us are important from that report. How about you? What are you finding to be important? And so on. That kind of dialogue specific to the asset. And then for those who've leaked from the funnel, first contact would be, I respect that you've leaked. We wouldn't use that term. We'd probably talk about, I get that you don't want to proceed at this time. We are going to stand down. But we thought, and back to the conversation I role-played before, because you're going to be thinking about the topic, you probably would enjoy getting some insights that we've gained from others who are going through the same journey. We'll share those with you. So that might take 1 or 2 or 3 emails, and then I would move on to the regular blog. So it's like we've got this one blog, but there might be 3 or 4 different types of feeder into it. That would be far better. But all of those presume email. Is email the only way to nurture?
Shortly, we'll show you how to do this in Funnel Plan. But before that, we're going to do 2 things. Share with you our conclusions and invite you to receive other blogs like this. Let's get to the conclusion first.
All right, 4 of our favourite tactics for nurturing. There are others, and frankly, if you've got some that you'd like to share, I would personally love to get an email from you with your favourite nurture suggestions. Here are the 4 that we use most commonly. Email, of course, remains the most used and most proven method of a nurture. Provided your content is valuable and provided that you don't flood them, so it's valuable and it's got the right kind of cadence, not so infrequent that they forget about you and not so frequent that they get annoyed by you, and that's a judgment call. We go every month. That's our judgment call. For some businesses, every day is the right cadence. For some, every 3 months is the right cadence. We've chosen a month. Second tactic is events, but not individual events or individual invitations to episodic events, but to an event series. We used to run a thing called Funnel Forum, and Funnel Forum was run every month or 2 in both Melbourne and Sydney, 2 of our main cities in Australia that we operate in. And the process of inviting people to that and conducting those every month, there were people who regularly attended those, and their nurture was consumed through those events. It's a legitimate tactic as well. Now, it could be that the invitation process is a letter, an email, a phone call, a mark your date at the last event to come to the next event. All of those are valid methods. What was important is that the nurture is occurring with some kind of rhythm, because we're slowly trying to change the perceptions of what's most important. If you're an expert in your business, and I presume to be in ours, if you're an expert in your business, then you know so much and you should be sharing that, but a little at a time, as I attempt to in these blogs. Telenurture is a favourite tactic as well. We had one client using this really effectively for late-stage leakers. Now, they were selling multi-100,000, kind of almost $1 million products and services, and so the value of the nurture was important. Also, they had a finite market. There's only so many prospects, and so every leaked prospect was kind of precious. And so they used telenurture, and they had a guy, I'll call him Tom, because that was his name. And Tom's job, he was a 65-year-old sales guy. He'd been in sales long enough to be good, but he'd been out of sales long enough to not be urgent. The sort of rushing 24-year-old, he was not. He had a good voice for radio. And the conversation with the salesperson would be, again, I respect that you're not going to go ahead at this time, but obviously you will be thinking about the topic. You've said we should re-engage in August next year, and so we will. In the meantime, though, I'm going to have my colleague Tom give you a call. Now, Tom's job will be twofold. Firstly, to share with you some of the lessons that we've learned from other companies going through this process, same process that you are, and the lessons that they've learned and we've learned from them. Secondly, he's going to check in with you to make sure that August still is the right time, because your timing could come forward or it could be pushed back, and we want to respect either of those possibilities. Would that be okay? And of course it was. And frankly, when Tom made the call, that's exactly what he did, not a thing more. Firstly, I want to check that the timing for us to re-engage is still about August. Secondly, I've got one more little gem that we've learned from another company going through a similar cycle to you. Very effective tactic for precious nurtures, precious recycling. The final one is social media. Now, I'm yet to see massive payback from social media and B2B. I know there's some great examples. There's a company called Scottitas who are doing some fantastic work in lead generation. Very impressed with the work that they're doing. So I'm not saying social's off, but let me say in regard to recycling, it's a tactic rather than the tactic, but it's still worth considering. If the leaker, the buyer who's leaked, perhaps is following your company or following you personally, then posting your blogs on your social media, on your own profile page in LinkedIn or on your company page in LinkedIn, and again, I generally prefer LinkedIn. We're still waiting for Google to pick up. I think it will. Facebook, unlikely to be critical for our B2B markets. So really it's LinkedIn. In our case, we cross-post on LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, in order to make sure that we are where our buyers want, but and Twitter as well, but we're pretty much expecting LinkedIn to be the primary tactic. Where I'm going with all of this is that if your prospects don't want to get your emails and don't want to get your phone calls, and they're not going to attend your events, then how are you going to nurture them? It could be that social media is the answer to that. So cross-posting your blogs with a post in each of the social media that you think your prospects are most likely to be consuming and most comfortable connecting with you on. That's the fourth tactic I would recommend.
If you enjoyed this blog, then likely you will enjoy others. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to receive this blog by visiting mathmarketing.com/blog or by visiting our YouTube channel. If you have a colleague who may be interested, we would be so grateful if you invited them to subscribe. Why don't you do that now? And when you come back, we'll show you how we do that in Funnel Plan.
As you know, Funnel Plan is a great way to bring your sales and marketing plan onto a single page. It describes your objectives, your strategy, your velocity, and the tactics that sales and marketing are going to use for every stage in the buyer's journey, from hello to thank you, or from new names found to decision made. We're talking today, though, specifically about recycling. That's right down the bottom here in the plan, and recycling is how we get prospects back into the funnel after they've leaked at any stage. So we've talked today about nurturing and recycling. I'll stick with recycling for the moment. And we had from last week's show a single recycling tactic, and then went all the way from interest established to decision made. We're going to, in this case, we're going to have a recycling tactic just for our late stage leaks. And we'll call that tele-nurture, the example that I gave you before. I'll leave it again ungrouped, but in this case I'm only going to use tele-nurture from somebody that got as far as, let's say, need agreed through to decision made. I'm going to use that. And that other tactic of the ongoing invitations to thought leadership, I might leave in place, because even those that have a tele-nurture program in place, I probably should still be inviting them to the thought leadership content. So we've got one recycling tactic that goes from interest to decision, and one that goes from need to decision. That's tele-nurture. Now, I mentioned in the blog that nurturing can also be earlier stage. Well, that's not really recycling. So let's get our tactics back again. And let's just go to tactics, like New York. And in this case, I've already got loads of tactics in here for progression. But it could be that I want to add or change a tactic that's got a nurturing character to it, but it's for an early stage progression. For early stage progressions, I want to be really careful that I'm only trying to get them from one stage to the next stage. So positioned in category, typically, to interest established. So let's take a look at the tactics that we've already got there. We don't need arbitrary additional tactics if one of them's already going to do the good job. And here we are, emails and direct mail promoting the blog. Frankly, that is going to be a great tactic to move buyers from positions to interest anyway, and the character of that is going to be nurturing almost by default. So all I'm really going to do to make sure that that's the case is I'm just going to say nurturing. That's it. It's a very small change because that tactic already ought to have been, or maybe nurturing rather than neuroing. Nurturing, that tactic already ought to have been nurturing. So really the change that we've made is at the recycling level, and we've just slightly modified one of our progression tactics. One more thing I want to quickly show you. Now in the recycling tactics, again we've got two tactics in here now, one that goes all the way from top to bottom, and that's ongoing invitations to thought leadership, plus we've got another tactic in here which is tele-nurturing for our late stage leakers. So what I want to make sure is that this new tactic that I've added is connected in. Now recognise that it's from need agreed to decision made, but I actually need to connect it really back into a very early stage in the funnel, because even though I'm only going to use this tactic from a late stage onwards, when they come back into the funnel, what stage are they going to come back into? Let's think about that for a moment. Surely if they were already at need agreed and I get them back into the funnel, it's going to be to solve a new problem. So I want to add a connection. You'll see in here that there should already be one, and it does. So let's add another connection now. So we're going to select the telenurture. Now what tactic do we want to bring the telenurture back into? Let's take a look at the tactics in our gap acknowledge stage. Perhaps it's going to be a personal meeting to explore the costs and consequences of failure to whatever the problem is that we have for this plan. So let's bring it back to there. It's only a small thing, but it allows us in the funnel plan to show how we want that those that we have recycled from that particular tactic, how we want them to progress back into the funnel. In next week's show, I'll show you how to build a perfect model of your imperfect funnel. Until then, may your funnel be full and always flowing.